What's going on, guys? In today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about a YouTube video that I actually recorded not too long ago. Now, for just basic reference, I do strongly recommend checking out that YouTube video. My handle is Ben Kennon, and the YouTube video is titled Entrepreneur Thought Experiment. And the reason that I want to reference you back to this video is because I actually have a PowerPoint presentation that I was able to locate for you guys. And the basics behind this video, essentially I took a Monday motivational segment that I'm doing with YouTube, and I'm kind of translating it into my podcast for all of you guys who, prefer vocal. I'm trying to hit, kind of all my bases here. Now, essentially what I did is I was just going through my camera roll, and, throughout the years, throughout the decades, I have been just screenshotting essentially things that I, find motivational. And I basically just kind of break everything down in a PowerPoint presentation. Now, it's a little bit more tricky over strictly audio because there's no visual. You guys can't actually see what I'm, describing. However, I'm going to try my best. And like I said, a point of reference, check out that YouTube video. So with no further ado, let's just go and get on in. So we're here, my first slide, and essentially I'm going to describe this picture for you guys. It's basically a three-prong or three-slide picture. And on the very top of it, it has, a picture representing a guy who's chasing money. And the next slide or the next picture right below it is going to be he has a little bit of money, but however, he's still, chasing the majority of it. It's just kind of blowing off in the wind in the distance. And the very last picture, he's holding all the money. However, his hair is gray, his skin is wrinkly, and he's standing at a cliff, and it actually has a sign that says end. And I thought this was very, very thought-provoking. And essentially what this depicts is the rat race, right? So it basically depicts just how modern culture and how everybody, basically conditions you to think. And this is really going back to the roots of school, right? So basically you get a job that, isn't necessarily your dream job. It doesn't necessarily align to all of your talents, but it's, quote unquote safe. And what you're doing is you're just chasing that paycheck. You're chasing the next paycheck. You're chasing paycheck and paycheck to paycheck. And if you're lucky, you're able to save some money to kind of live off of, to kind of, accumulate some sort of wealth. Now, the majority of this money comes at the end of your life, whether it be a 401k, some sort of social security, or a pension plan. Now, that is the thing that's the most thought-provoking to me is, why is this so deeply ingrained inside of our society, and why is this a thing? I really want to know the backbone, the structure on why this is a thing. And, not only why is this, but what can I do to change this? And there's a couple of different things that we're able to do to change this. Now, the main thing would be, there's two things. It's going to be your income. So increasing your income and increasing your savings / investing, right? So it actually breaks down. There's a little caption underneath this picture, and it says, you should never chase money. Work towards something that you are passionate about, and the money will follow. Now, this is beautiful. I absolutely love this. And essentially what I'm trying to get at is most people follow that rat race, that quote unquote safe job. What I am doing and what I strongly recommend to my audience is finding a job or some sort of profession or passion that you like, that is very, very interesting to you. And you need to be very, very self-reflective in this point. Essentially, find something that you like, and wherever that intersects with, that needs to intersect at the same point as what you're good at. So what you're good at, where does it intersect with what you like? And, in the very center of that, where that X is, that marks the dot, that's exactly what you need to be pursuing. That's what you need to be doing, because I can like basketball all I want, but I'm not 6'4". I'm not nearly as athletic as those guys, and it's just not realistic. So I'm finding something that I like doing, and this is all these entrepreneurial studies. And if you guys don't know who I am, like I said, I'm Ben Cannon. This will be my very first podcast. However, if you want more of a feel of who I am, check out my YouTube at Ben Cannon. So let's go to the next slide. So in the next slide, we have a couple of different pictures. Starting from the top left is a $10,000 bill stack. Going to the right, it's $1 million stack of bills. $100 million stack of bills is the next one. Going further to the right, it's $1 billion. And further to the right, it's actually $1 trillion in $100 bills. And it essentially shows the proportions and how big it is to scale. Now they have a person standing in front of this $1 million stack of bills, and it looks pretty small. It's just kind of like this little briefcase kind of stack. And we get to the $100 million. and it's actually a full pallet of just $100 bills. So, if you guys have seen Breaking Bad in that scene where he has it all stacked on the pallet in that storage shed, that is essentially what I'm looking at in this picture. Now, go to the $1 billion stack, and it looks like there are, let me see, 6 pallets worth, or no, actually, I guess it would be 10. So it'd be 10 pallets worth of those $100 million and going to the $1 trillion. And this is what's crazy. It looks like literally the entire storage facility is covered in these pallets, and they're stacked not one high, but actually 2 high. And this honestly is just a very thought-provoking kind of experiment for me because, I am an entrepreneur. However, I'm a self-made entrepreneur, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are as well. So I've never physically held a $10,000 stack of bills in my hand. It's been in my bank account. I've seen it through various other methods, whether it be in Shopify, investing, what have you. But I've never actually held it in my hand. So I don't really know what it's like. And being self-made, you don't really have necessarily the background that a lot of people have with money. So it's just kind of interesting, something that I'm looking forward to. Now, the next picture is also very sweet, and it also says, actually, this is what it says. It says the cost of success, and below everything, it actually has a bunch of check marks, and next to those check marks, there's going to be essentially bullet points, right? So I'll get to the first one. It says late nights, early mornings, very few friends, being misunderstood, feeling overwhelmed, questioning your sanity, and being your own cheerleader. And I absolutely love this for multiple reasons. People think that entrepreneurship, just because it's becoming more mainstream and a little bit more taboo, people know the word, and they know the potential profit that you're able to get. They think for whatever reason that it's cool and it's easy. So that means it's attracting a lot of people who aren't, full-blown, true-bred entrepreneurs. And that is a very dangerous thing because you need to be able to handle every single one of these checkpoints. You need to be able to handle the late nights. You need to be able to handle the early mornings. Very few friends, at least in the beginning, until you gain that group of solid friends that are like-minded individuals that can help you. You guys all help each other. But in the meantime, 99.9% of people, that's what they call you, the 0.1%, the 0.01%, the wealthiest essentially, are going to think differently. And those are not the people you want to associate yourselves with. And, it also says being misunderstood. And that's just a kind of a common thing because, like I said, at that first, you're not really surrounded by that many entrepreneurs. And the next one says feeling overwhelmed. And this is very true. And I did listen to this interview with Tai Lopez, and it was very, very intriguing because he actually said, this guy can generate $100 million per year. I believe that's actually what he's currently making. Now, if he says, and this is, not verbatim, but just kind of basically what he said, if he says that he is still unsure of every move that he makes, that he's just, constantly trying and testing and failing hard and fast and often. So in order to learn from those experiences, if that's what it's like for somebody who can generate $100 million, then why do we expect it to be so easy? We shouldn't. And that brings me to my next point is questioning your sanity. And that is essentially just at the core of what we are, the very evolution of what we are, just that fight or flight. We need to do things that aren't necessarily good for you, at least in the first order consequences. And I'll get to that in a minute here. But we need to do things that will essentially benefit us sometime in the future, and that's kind of a thing that a lot of people have problems with, right? They have problems with doing things that will please them now, but not in the future, and they're always chasing that next high, which ultimately leads to your demise. And I'll kind of touch on the first and second order consequences really quick. I don't want this podcast to be too terribly long, but the first order consequences is essentially you perform some sort of action, what's going to be that result? So let's give you an example. So say I'm tired, but I need to cram, I need to study for this test tomorrow. First order consequence would be if I sleep, that's pleasurable to me, I will feel good, okay? Second order consequence is if I actually sleep, right, instead of studying, I'm going to fail that test. However, if I cram and I don't feel good in that moment, which would be that first order consequence, I'm going to perform well in the second order consequence, which is that test. And Ray Dalio has that principle. It's very, very strong. I use it all the time. I always think, what is the second order consequence? Because that is what you're truly after. And the very last one just essentially says being your own cheerleader. And that's so strong because as an entrepreneur, at least at first, you're not really going to have, fans, aficionados, devoted followers, or people just really just cheering you on. Maybe your family, maybe some friends, but not too many. So you really need to be self-motivated because, again, people are still going to question your sanity. Think of Thomas Edison. That he tried 1,000 times. I'm sure people thought he was crazy to invent the light bulb. Next one right here. It says the life of an entrepreneur. And this one's going to be hard to kind of describe, but it's essentially just a zigzag line going top to bottom. And there are peaks and troughs of the entrepreneur lifestyle. And it says, I'm doing it, exclamation point. At the very bottom, it says, what have I done? At the very top, it goes up again. It says, I'm feeling inspired. And then it goes right back down. It says, fuck my life. And then it goes up again. It says, I'm on top of the world. And then it goes down. Why? And at the very top, it says, I'm going to be okay. And this is so strong to me because, again, this is something that a lot of people embark on. And this journey is in no means linear. There's so much trial and error in what we are doing and what we are trying to accomplish as an entrepreneur that it's hard to have concrete milestones and benchmarks. Whereas most people would go to primary school, then they would go to then they go to high school, and then they would go to college, and then they become, a doctor, or lawyer, whatever it may be. And it would just kind of linearly progress from there. And there's a defined, socially normal path that they have to take. In the entrepreneur world, it's not like that. So that was really interesting. Now, I'm only going to do a couple more. Essentially, we have a quote, and this is going to be from the book of Proverbs. And whether or not you're religious, I strongly recommend reading this book. It is essentially just filled with a bunch of knowledge from a king, way back when in biblical times, King Solomon, and he was known as the richest man. So it makes sense that I need to read this. So when I'm looking at verse 5 here, in Proverbs 21, it says, the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. And this really comes back down to the core principle of essentially patience and diligence and integrity and hard work. All of what we're doing, guys, and all of what we're doing is not seeing results right away. That's going to ultimately lead to profit. We need to be forward thinking as a society instead of thinking as of the past. And we just need to be more patient, especially with smartphones these days. We're scrolling through our Instagram feeds, at practically light speed. Whereas, 7 years ago, our parents, grandparents were still reading we're still reading their emails word to word. So we're really losing our attention spans here. It also says, the next line, it says, as surely as haste leads to poverty. And that's self-explanatory. If you want to get rich quick, there is no get rich quick. And the people who do get rich quick, it is usually fleeing. Think about the lottery. Think about trust fund babies who haven't been, properly conditioned. What's the statistic? It's like 90% of lottery winners go broke and actually end up in a worse spot than they were because they have no money management skills. And that comes down to speaking the language of money. And this podcast is really going to be devoted to essentially that. It's going to be devoted to first laying the foundation. So that's going to be more psychology. You need to lay the foundation in order to speak the language of money, because even if you come and acquire money, you're not going to know what to do with it. You're not going to be able to amass wealth, which is permanent. Riches are not, wealth is permanent. Riches can flee. Strongest, you need to lay your foundation first. And then you build up from there. Then you go to how to make money. How does my money make money? How do I give back? Things like that. There's pillars. Now, I'm going to go to the next one. This is another Proverbs, and this will be my last one of today. It says, whoever loves pleasure will become poor. Whoever loves wine and olive oil will never be rich. And this is essentially the same thing as those first in order consequences. Now, whoever loves pleasure will become poor. And a pleasure in a way is sleep. And there's actually another verse that says sleep, and I'll get to that in a later podcast. But that's something that you may need to give up. You may need to give up your sanity at times. You may need to give up status. You may need to give up certain things that at first you want them. Your body's telling you that you need them, but you really don't. And it says, whoever loves wine and olive oil will never be rich. And that's going to be the same thing. That's just going to be what is pleasurable. What does the flesh desire? Now, okay, actually looks like I have one more, so I will get into this really quickly. And this one says, the wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. And this is really smart. To me, this is talking a little bit more about investing and amassing wealth, which, like I said, is permanent. Riches are temporary and they can be fleeing, right? So they store up choice food and olive oil. Essentially, what that is, back in their days, that was going to be riches, that was wealth, that was money, right? So they didn't necessarily have fiat currency. They actually traded in kind. So that's, most likely what they're talking about, a biblical expert. That's just kind of my interpretation of this. Now, what does that mean in today's society? How can that be applicable to me? And the thing that I really think is applicable is we need to store up today's choice food, and that's going to be fiat currency. That's going to be our wealth, and we don't need to just store it up. We need to place it into vehicles that will grow. And I'll get into this a lot later, but it's very, very important to save at least 10% of your money and invest it in something that will give you 8 to 10% return on your investment, because inflation is approximately 3%. So if you're just putting in your savings account, you're actually losing money. Now, that is all I have for you today, guys. I strongly recommend that you go to my YouTube video. It's a little bit more high key. It's not so, podcasty of a vibe, and I strongly hope you guys will do that. So thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoyed. It's been Ben Kennon, and I'm going to peace out.